Yo, what is up? Welcome to another live stream. We have not done one of these in quite some time, and I'm on the road, so it's a little bit harder for me to get videos edited. So that's why over the next couple days, we're going to be doing some live streams at this time. And with today's live stream, we're going to be looking at Luminar NEO. Now that it's the full-featured version of Luminar, I have an opportunity to really make some content centered around it. And today we're going to be looking at all of the AI features, or not all, most of the AI features built into Luminar NEO, and specifically how you can use them to edit a portrait. So hopefully that helps you out. Now, I am using the standalone version of Luminar NEO, and I'm not using it as a plugin, although that's the best way, or the way that I would recommend everyone use Luminar NEO. If you can, at least. But that is the way that I would recommend using it. And the reason for that is Luminar NEO is not the greatest for standalone only, just because it focuses on one thing, and that's editing photos, not cataloging as much as there is a photo file structure and things like that. But I'm not going to get into that. Now, if you are watching this on the restream or just the replay on YouTube, then hopefully by the time you're watching this, there's going to be chapters down below, so you can jump to whatever segment interests you the most, and you can go back and forth and all that good stuff. And then you can also check the description box below, because all of the images that I'm going to be using in today's tutorial or lesson, if you will, is going to be available to you to download from Unsplash, the royalty-free photos. So let's go ahead and jump into the agenda. So as you can see here, we have a few items listed on today's agenda. The first one, we're going to just do a really quick overview of the AI tools. The second one, we're going to look at the background removal AI, and this is going to be kind of cool. And then, of course, we're just going to go down the list: Portrait Bokeh AI, Relight AI, Face AI, Skin AI, and then at the end, I'm just going to wrap it all up with a few manual edits. So let's just go ahead and jump into the computer. Okay. Click here, and as you can see, I'm inside of Luminar NEO, and I am on a album. And this album has 10 photos in it, so we're just going to go ahead and get started with looking at the overview. So I have the first photo selected here. I'm going to hit edit, and this brings our photo up inside of the edit viewer. Now, just really quick, there is a crop AI, all right? So if you are like, you know what, I don't know enough about cropping or composition or anything like that, you can click on crop AI, hit composition, or a crop AI composition, or a composition AI, and this is going to try and give a different look for your image overall, or crop for your image, I should say. Now, if I don't like the crop AI it cut off her elbows down here. To me, that's just a weird crop. If you're going for something creative, or maybe you're using this on a flyer of some sort, and that doesn't matter, then there you go. You got something that's a little bit more interesting. However, what I'm going to do is drag this down because there's a lot of headroom up there and I don't need it, right? And I'm okay with her face being in the upper third and in the center third, as well as her hands. It just gives interest through all thirds of the image. So this is what makes this a very strong image. Now, if we were to revert this back to the original, you'll see that she is covering the upper third, center third, and the lower third of the image. So this is also strong, but you got some distractions over here. So I really do like that composition AI kind of figured that piece out, and I'm just gonna set this the way that I want, and then I'm gonna hit apply. So now I have a little bit more interesting photo. It is a little bit tighter in on the subject, but that's just a part of how this goes, right? So that's crop AI. Now, enhance AI, which is one of my favorite features inside of On1, which is, or On1, inside of Luminar, is, and you can tell that it's one of my favorites because I have it up here in the favorites. Now, Sky AI, it's in the favorites. That was just because I was testing it out, but I really do like Enhance AI. I add this to pretty much every image that I edit, all right? So if you see me editing in Luminar NEO, or if I tell you that a photo was edited inside of Luminar NEO, I probably added this and pulled it up to about 40%. This seems to be where it works the best. Now, I am editing JPEGs today, which whenever you edit a JPEG, you're already working on, I guess, a slightly compromised version of the image. It's like it's got a lot of stuff baked into it. So Enhance AI, really cool. It's super easy to use. All you gotta do is drag this up, and then you can even use masking options. And it has all of the masking options available to you in Luminar, available right there. So really cool. Now we're gonna skip over Sky AI because I don't think it's gonna really matter as much. Now, Structure AI is actually pretty good if you're using or taking a photo of something like this background here. Now, or I'm sorry, when we talk about portraits, if you are taking a portrait image and the background could probably be cleaned up a little bit better. Well, what you can do is take Structure AI and you pull it negative, right? You see what it's doing to the background. Now, if you are paying attention, you'll also notice that it's applying the effect to my subject. So if I go masking and then I click mask AI, I'll let that kind of do its thing, and we'll see what Luminar, I was going to say On1 again. I'm so used to working in On1 that I say On1 as like second nature, so, or first nature, I don't know. It's just the program that I use. And it's taking a little bit longer than it normally does. It could be because I'm streaming, but nonetheless, we let Luminar do its computing magic here, and we'll see what happens. All right, so once it is done, it gives you a few categories here, right? So I'm going to click on human because I want to see what it is selecting. Now, for some reason, it doesn't want to show me the human. That's it. There we go. Oh. All right, so this actually did a really good job at selecting the human, right? And that's all I want because I want to remove this particular filter from the person or my subject. So I'm going to hit invert, and now if we turn this off and on, you'll see, oh, looks like I got a little bit on her elbows there that I'll have to clean up. But you'll see that it is making this background look a little bit more faded, and she's standing out quite well. All right. So that's one way that you could work with structure AI when you're working with portraits. And maybe that's just too strong, so I could pull that up just a little bit. That way it's not impacting the background behind her that much, but it just makes those separations or compressions look a little bit more milky, if you will, or soft focus. So we'll go ahead and close that. Now, the next one is Relight AI, and we're going to go in depth with this, so I'm not going to go over it right now. But then we have Atmosphere AI. Now, Atmosphere AI is pretty cool if you're doing something a little bit more scenic, or you want to be a little bit more creative with the way you edit a portrait. This is one of those things like maybe you shot something with fog or with a smoke or something like that, right? So you can add a little bit of mist to your image. Now, this is the depth is only at the top of the image right now when you're all the way on the far left side. But if I were to pull this over to the right, you'll see that it starts to come down. Now, this is really, really cool if I wasn't on a photo like this, because it doesn't look that good on this particular image. However, if I were on a photo where someone was in the woods, or we were going for like a fantasy look, then this could actually work out pretty well. Same thing with haze. It all works the same, right? You can use this as a tool to really get a unique look that you wouldn't be able to get without software that is automatically or intelligently adding this to your image. Now, I don't want to have that on the image, so I'm just going to turn it off and close it. Now, the next thing is the Portrait Bokeh AI. Of course, we're going to go over that, so I'm not going to talk about it. Face AI, Skin AI, and the one that I think is probably the most, what's the word? Controversial, if that's the way to say that, is this body AI. Now, I'm not a huge fan of restructuring someone's body. I think that this you can really mess with someone's self-esteem, and I just think that everyone already looks good the way that they are, and if they don't feel that they look good, then they should probably do something to fix that physically, all right, in a healthy way. I don't think we need to edit the photos. Now, if you are a wedding or portrait photographer and someone comes to you and they're like, hey, look, I've been trying to lose a little bit of weight and it's going to come through in the camera, is there something you can do to kind of modify that? Just know that you have this tool available to you and you can use it. But ultimately, and it works pretty well, right? You wouldn't be able to notice that. I don't think you would notice that. You would look at it and be like, oh yeah, that could be realistic, right? So use it moderately and modestly, but it can be used nonetheless, all right? And then of course the abdomen, you can shrink or leave that as normal. Now, I don't use this particular tool. Personally, I just don't think that there is a need for it, because if we're photographing someone, then we should capture them the way that they are. All right, so that is all of the AI tools that would be useful when you are photographing or editing a portrait photo. Now, let's go back to our agenda just to make sure that I stay on track here. So now we're going to go to the background removal AI. All right, so background removal AI. We're going to get rid of this background here. If I click on layer properties up here at the very top, and I click on masking, portrait background is the very last option here. So if I click that, it is already done with its analyzing or analysis. And that's because I already used the AI masking earlier when I masked her out. So if I hit remove, it should give us that exact same background, but cut out. So we'll see. And you can see it did a pretty decent job, but if you look right here, it didn't do so well, right? I wouldn't count that as the best. And then we got some interesting or some little stragglers right there. But overall, this did well. Now we're going to take a look at some other examples on more complex images because not everyone is photographing with a high-end camera. Maybe you're using a cell phone, and maybe you photograph someone in the woods where there's a very complex background. We'll see how this tool works with that. But I will give you the fair warning. You should probably only use this on backgrounds where the separation of subject to background is very prominent. Otherwise, you're going to have issues. Now, let me go back here real quick. So we'll click remove. All right. So if you say, you know what, I want to make edits to my mask for this portrait AI, or I'm sorry, background removal. If you click on refinements brush, it's going to bring you to an option here. Now you have three different objects. You have transition, or I'm sorry, three different options. You have transition, you have object, and you have background. Transition is going to be this opaque area or transparent area between the orange and the blue. And this is typically where your mask starts to decipher edges, right? So you think of this as like edge refinement. Now, you want to zoom in, and I'm just going to hit Command and plus, or Control and plus if you're on a PC. And then holding the space bar, I get my little hand tool, and then I can click and drag and move around because I want to be in pretty close, all right? Now, I want to try and make this area right here transition better, right? So I don't have that background. Now, what I'm going to do is using my bracket keys, I can make my brush size smaller or larger, but you can also come over here and click and drag. It's up to you, but I like to have my brush over the area that I want to impact and then move my brush size until I get to where I want it to be. Now, this area right here can be included in transition, so I'm just going to paint over that and then let that go. Now, this does take a little bit of time to process, but after your computer catches up, you'll see that it works out pretty well. Now, the next option is going to be object. Now, object is everything that's painted in this light orange color. All right, so if I paint over this, you'll see that I'm about to add more to the mask. Now, let's say I paint all this and all this down here, and then it's going to get added to my mask. Oh no, look, I just made all of this extra stuff show up. And if you notice, there's no erase button. Well, you got to go back to transition. And what you'll do is you will paint in the transition area for your subject. All right, separating your subject or erasing what is considered object. Now, there are some issues or some challenges with this, okay? Your best bet is to try and get less of a transition and more of a background painting. So we'll go to the last one. And anything that's in this color blue, that is your background. So if I paint all of this and I call that my background, you'll see that this gets added to the selection. And it just makes my my selection a little bit closer. So as this transition happens, hopefully it has enough information to make better decisions on what to keep and what to get rid of. All right. And so I'm just going around and I'm painting as much as I can to improve the way that this looks. But I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time because this would take a very long time. But what I do want you to know is that you can come in here and refine your selection as Luminar has made for you. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Command 0 to bring me back to full screen. And as you can see, it's trying to do its best to make a better selection. And when you're done, you can just click the refinement brush arrow here, and it closes that particular thing down. Now, you notice I have some issues going on up here. All right, still got those issues going. I can take the brush tool, click on erase, and this works better with a Wacom tablet, but for right now I am using a mouse. You can come in here and manually edit your selection. Now this goes a lot faster because it is not using AI tools to make that happen. It's just a good old-fashioned eraser. All right, that's all this is. So if you can't get what you want with the AI, just know that you still have all of your tools here to erase normally. Okay, and that may be a good way of cleaning up whatever it is that you have here. And it would also probably help to have a background. So if I was to click there, click this, and then we'll click and drag underneath. We'll bring up the opacity. And if I'm going fast and you're like, whoa, Chris, slow down, I can't keep up. Don't worry about this so much because the concept here is just for me to show you how you can remove a background and manage the mask, the layers, and everything else that you want to do. That'll be in a later tutorial, but just know that you can click on the plus and you can add layers and you can put whatever you want on your image to make it make sense for your job or whatever your project needs. All right, so I can do something like that and come back over here, maybe even we'll just close out layer properties, and we can call that the completed image. Now you have access to all these images as I mentioned before, so please feel free to download them and practice or follow along as you need to. Now let me go ahead and head back to the catalog. And so the next thing that we're going to look at is Portrait Bokeh AI. And in order to do that, I think it makes sense to open this image. So let's go ahead and jump back into the computer. And we'll look at this image here. So I'm going to scroll down, or actually, first thing, I want to enhance this just a little bit. We'll leave it at that. And then I will scroll down here until we get to Portrait Bokeh AI. All right. Now, this is a really cool tool, and I'm going to bring that up to the center there. We'll pull the amount up. All right. And we're going to go, we'll go 60%, 61. That's what we stop at. All right. Turning this off and turning it on, you can see what's happening in the background. Now, this is really cool if you were one of those people who are shooting on your iPhone and you're just not getting that separation in the background. Luminar is going to do its best job to figure out where the background is, and it's going to try and make more of that separation between your subject, which is the model here, and the background. Now, you have access to the brush or whatever the mask is, and you can brush in or out your background. As you can see, Luminar did a really good job at finding the subject in this particular image. So that's why I'm getting a really good separation between the subject and the background. Now, what I do want to show you, let me see if I can zoom in. I want you to take a look right here around the subject's hair, okay? When I turn this off, you can see she had some flyaway hairs. Now, in this example, I think it's okay that those are removed. But if you are photographing someone and maybe they have a ponytail and you don't want the ponytail to get chopped off, this is why it's important to know that you can brush over your mask and bring that back. So let's see what happens. We'll just experiment here. I am going to try and bring those flyaways back. So I'm going to leave my brush on the crosshair, the little plus sign. I'm going to put that on the inside of her hairline here. And I'm just going to use the feather of the brush to try and paint just outside. So that way I'm not bringing back a whole lot, right? Because those flyaways aren't too far away from where the top of her head is, or where her hairline is. So we'll just paint there, and now it's bringing back those flyaway hairs. Now, obviously, you're going to want to do this all the way around the model or your subject to make sure that you're not missing something. But that is one of the best ways to try and recapture or regain that information. Now, if you look here, I'm getting, I'm not going to hover over it because I don't want to show you the mask again. But if you look to the left of my subject's hair, you'll see that it's not a very flattering look between those flyaway hairs or those stray hairs. So let me hit Command 0 and zoom out. The way that you really want to view your image, and I can't stress this enough, you want to always view your image the way that they're going to be consumed. The way that this particular image would be consumed is like this. Unless you're pixel peeping, you're not going to be zooming in. It's going to be at the resolution that you've exported the image. That's typically how it's going to be viewed. If not, it'll be viewed even smaller than this, which apparently I can't shrink it any smaller than 17%. So, but just know that it's going to be smaller than that. Now, back to the Portrait Bokeh AI feature, or tool, I should say. So you got three controls here. You got focus, defocus, and restore. All right. Focus is just that, right? It's everything that you want in focus. This is what I have. I have my subject painted, and it's bringing her back into focus. Defocus is just that. Everything opposite of this is going to be defocused. All right. So if I wanted something else to be defocused, let's say we want to defocus her sleeve here. So I'm just going to paint that. And now her sleeve is going to get some of that focus, defocus effect. Let me zoom in so that way you can see what's happening. And sorry, my computer just isn't keeping up, but if you, and yeah, let me go to 100%. There we go. All right, so now the sleeve is soft focused, and you can see the transition line here. If I turn this on, there's more focus in the sleeve because there was actual focus in the sleeve. And then when I turn off, or turn the effect on, I should say, when I turn it off, you can see that the sleeve was defocused. But when I turn it on, it's defocused. Oh, wow, I can't think right now. Words and stuff, hard to speak. Anyhow, I want this to be in focus, so I'm just going to paint back over the subject here and get her sleeve back into focus because I want it to be in focus. All right. But that's how defocus works. And then restore, let me hit Command 0. Should bring us back. Restore is just a way of restoring what was already lost, right? From the original AI. Restore is just for the original AI masking. Just whenever you clicked on Portrait Bokeh AI, whatever mask was made, it's allowing you to restore that. So like I can't click out here because it didn't mask this originally, right? It masked her originally, and that's what restore is doing. Now you have some more options here. Let me scroll this up a little bit so that way you can see it on the monitor. And the first one is going to be brightness. So this is for the background, by the way. So if I pull the brightness level down, you'll see that the background is starting to get darker, right? If I pull it up, it gets brighter. So sometimes one of the things that you want to do separating the subject is to create a little bit of contrast with your subject. So you make the background darker so your subject appears brighter, and that brings more attention to your subject. All right. Now you also have the highlight. Now this is allowing you to make those pop a little bit more. So your background is somewhat interesting, but I think that there could be a use case in this. I just personally don't need it in most cases. All right. I don't find myself grabbing that too much. What I do mess around with sometimes, depending on the photo, is the warmth slider. Now, a good rule of thumb is if your subject is going to be brighter, or if your subject is warm, then cool down the background. Now, she is a little bit warmer here, so I'm going to take the warmth slider and I'm going to cool down the background. And you'll see that that's creating a different type of separation, all right? The temperature of the background to the subject, you don't want to make it too drastic, but it does help to pull down on the subject's background just a little bit. And then you also have depth correction. So this is going to help Luminar figure out how far back the background should start to fade. All right. So if I pull this all the way to the left, you'll see that it brings that super crazy blur all the way down to the bottom. And if I pull it all the way to the right, it doesn't do any blur, or not very much at least. So it doesn't look very good. Now, this is important to understand how to use based off of where your subject is in relationship to the background. For her, she has a foreground element. She's probably considered to be in the midground, and then you have the background that's back over here. But I would say that this tree is closer to her, so that plane of focal, or that focal plane, is probably equivalent, right? Don't want to make this too technical, but she's probably closer to this in the focal plane, which means this is going to be more in focus, even if you were to photograph this with like a 1.2 aperture, right? So you don't want to make your photos look unrealistic. However, you want to defocus maybe that just a little bit in comparison to that. So that's where the depth correction can come in. So that way that's not in focus, but she is definitely in focus. I hope that made sense. If it did, drop a like on the video and comment below that it made sense, because I feel like I was talking a little bit in circles there. And then we have edge correction. Now, edge correction is just that simple. It's going to find the edge of the mask and it's going to correct it as necessary. Okay. Now, again, be careful with this slider, because if you go too much with it, just wanted to zoom in on the image there. you can see you start to get like these really harsh lines. And for this image, it works fine just because there's so much going on that she doesn't necessarily look like she's not standing out pretty well. However, you can go too far with it and you start to see it's transitioning into her coat here. All right. So we'll pull this back to number 20 because that's where it was. So hopefully the portrait bokeh AI makes good sense to you. Again, this is at 100%. You can make this whatever you think would make the most sense. Hey, how are you doing? You put this up and make it do whatever you think makes the most sense for your image. All right. Now, what was the next piece? The next piece. So we covered Portrait Bokeh AI. Now we are on Relight AI. Let's go back to our computer. And actually, this image will work perfectly for what we want to do next. All right. So we're going to scroll up here and we are going to select Relight AI. I'm going to go ahead and click on Relight AI. It opens up the module. And this one is pretty straightforward and simple, but we will talk through it a little bit. So we have brightness near, brightness far, and depth. I don't want to insult anyone's intelligence, but if you pull brightness near into the positive on the right, then the brightness of what Luminar thinks is the closest thing to the camera, because this is brightness near, as you can see, it's going to make everything that's near the lens, or whatever Luminar perceives to be closest to the lens, it's going to make it brighter. Or you can bring brightness near darker, which then makes everything else in the background dark. All right. Now, I'm going to reset that. And brightness far does essentially the same thing, just in reverse. Everything that's further away from the camera is going to be dark, and everything that is closer to the camera in the background, everything that Luminar believes is the furthest from the camera, it will brighten if you pull it to the right. Now, this is a really cool tool to use if you need to relight a particular area in your photo. So for this instance, the subject is in the shadow. So if I wanted to, I can make the brightness near a little bit brighter, and that's going to bring all of this up in exposure. And then the brightness far, I can pull that down. So now it's very subtle, but she's brighter and the background is darker. And I didn't have to make any mask on my own, and it's good to go. Now, a lot of you see my editing style, and I normally do this with a radial filter where I put it over the subject, the areas that I want to bring the most attention to, and then I darken the background using a inverse radial filter, or an inverted radial filter. I don't have to do that now with Relight AI. It does it for me. Now, the depth slider is just that. It's going to figure out where the balance is between the near and the far of your mask. Hopefully that made sense. It's going to figure out the depth between the furthest point in your image and the closest point in your image to the camera, or in relationship to your camera. Now, you can just mess around with this and figure out which one works the best for you. It is your choice, but just know that that's essentially what the depth slider is doing. Every image is going to respond differently to that. Now, the advanced settings. If you start to get halos between the transition, which I'm not seeing any halos here, so let me just bring brightness far. So now you can see I'm getting halos around her hair right here. So I can just pull up the dehalo, and you see how it's trying to get rid of it. But I did such an extreme adjustment there that Luminar is having a hard time really trying to work that out. But if I pull it all the way down, you can see that they really shine through. But if I pull it all the way up, it still doesn't necessarily clean up all of those halos, all right? And this is the reason why you don't want to make extreme adjustments. You should probably make more subtle adjustments, especially when you start talking about brightening the foreground element and darkening the background element. And then, of course, you have your warmth near and warmth far sliders. So again, we've already cooled down the background. So maybe if I wanted to pull the warmth down in the background a little bit more and pull the warmth near up a little bit more, you can see the background is darker and it's a cooler temperature than our foreground or where our subject here is. All right. And you can really, let's see, it's got a little pixelated right there. It's not, there we go. It wasn't keeping up with the edits. But I don't want to make my computer crash. So nonetheless, you can mess around with this. Now, the cool thing about all of this is there is a mask, and you can use Mask AI and really put this where you want your lighting. Now, when we get into the manipulating light in a photo live stream, I'm going to show that more in an advanced way. So if that's something you're interested in, I believe that one is on Sunday at 8 p.m. So tune in on Sunday, or if you're watching this after June 19th, which is that Sunday, and also happens to be Father's Day here in the States, then you can watch it. You'll be able to find that particular video on my channel, and you can watch the replay of it. So that is Relight AI in a nutshell, and how I would recommend using it on a portrait image. So let's go back to our agenda, and the next thing that we're going to do is Face AI. Face AI. All right. So here we are with a very different image, and this one, I wanted something where we're more focused in on the face, and that's why I chose this particular image. But you could really use this on any image that you want. Now, again, I always like to add a little bit of accent AI. That's just my personal preference. Whenever I'm working in Luminar, I usually never edit a photo without it. To tell the truth, I usually always turn that particular feature on. So we're going to come down to Face AI. Now, this again is one of those cosmetic things that it's up to you how you want to use it. But I think you can use it in a very moderate way. Hey, what is up? And thank you for tuning in. So yeah, Face AI, we turn that on, and now we're going to have two features here. We got Face Light and we have Slim Face. Now again, I don't mess around with the Slim Face feature, but the Face Light feature is actually very helpful. In this instance, we'll just go ahead and pull that up quite a bit, so that way it comes through on the YouTube compression, and maybe we'll pull it up a little bit more. And what it's doing is it's exposing the face. Now, in this image, it just looks not so good. when it's pulled up so high, right? Between turning this off and on, you can see he's in shadow, and then he's out of shadow. Now, if I were to pull this back down, maybe say about there, you can see this area right now, the face is a little bit brighter, and maybe that's even still too much. Shadows are a part of photography. It's a part of developing contrast in your image and mastering the manipulation of light. So my recommendation is use the face light if the face really needs it, but otherwise, if the face is in shadow, maybe there's a good reason for the face to be in shadow, and that's okay. All right. Now, next thing is going to be the eyes. Now, eyes are probably the most important thing in a portrait image. So I'm going to zoom in on the eyes. Looks a little weird and creepy that we're looking straight into this guy's eyes, but that's the best way for me to show you what's going to happen here. So right here we have iris. Now, I don't know if the iris change is going to work very well. Oh, look at that. Now we got some creepy alien blue eyes for this guy. Looks really weird when you zoom out, and it's even weirder when you zoom in. So we will go on. Maybe he needs brown eyes. Now he looks like he's having a bad day. Okay, maybe hazel. Nope, that doesn't work very well for him either. Let's go with owl. Yeah, that probably wasn't going to work. So, and you can mess around and give someone cat eyes. I don't know why this feature is in here other than for like gimmicks or messing around, but it's there. Nonetheless, we're going to go back to original, and we're going to try and make his eyes look better, his original eyes, because those fit the best. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is come over here to iris flare, and this right here doesn't really show up well on here, so I'll find another image where that works a little bit better. But what will show up is the eye enlargement. So we're going to go ahead and click on enlarge eyes, and you will see his eyes, it's like a bloating tool for the eyes. Now, this, from what I understand, is a technique used to enhance features on a model. He does look like a Marvel bad guy, especially when you give him the blue eyes. Yeah. Sorry for this poor gentleman. We're messing with his facial features, but from what I understand, and I don't use this feature all that often, but sometimes you want to make the connection with someone's eyes whenever you're editing or whenever you're looking at a photo, right? Because whenever a person is looking into the lens, that is the first thing that you go to when you see the portrait. You go straight to the eyes, unless there's something else very unique about the image, in which case you probably look at that first. Now, if the eyes are too small in the frame, then Luminar gives you the ability to make them a little bit larger. Now, we'll zoom in again, and we'll look at the eye whitening. So this is going to whiten the areas outside or around the iris, and eye whitening. There it is. And I'm just going to pull it up pretty high. Now, for this image, it doesn't look like it's doing that much, and it's enhancing it a little bit, but you can tell it is only doing just a bit. Now, the reason why you would add in the eye whitening is because it really does help with making that connection with the eyes. All right, everything is about making the connection in a portrait with the eyes. If you make something brighter in an image, our eyes goes to that area first. So if you make the whites around their eyes a little bit whiter, then you will draw the viewer's attention to the eyes there. Again, that's one of those areas that you would have to determine if it's worthwhile for your particular image, right? And then the eye enhancer, this is just, we'll call it, for lack of better words, the sparkle or the twinkle in the eye. As you can see, as I pull this up and down, you can see it's really just adding some localized exposure to the iris, and that is okay. Hello. All right. And got my family on the stream with me tonight, so got my daughter and my wife hanging out. Then red eye removal. I don't have any red eye here, so it's not going to really work. Dark circle removal. Now, the dark circle, Luminar may pick this little pink pigment up a little bit, but the dark circles, they really happen in older ladies. Men can have them as well. And it's more, I think they call it raccoon eyes, if I'm not mistaken. But it's picking up that area around the eye a little bit more. Just a little bit on this particular image. If you look in this area here, let me turn this off and then turn it back on. You can see it's picking up this area just a little bit. Now, here's the deal. I've said this before or earlier tonight, that shadows are not a problem. And what I think people are trying to do when they edit that particular way with getting rid of the dark circles is they're trying to draw more contrast away from the image, in my opinion, because things that are in shadow are just as interesting as things that are in light. Because if everything was in light, then it would just be boring when we start talking about an image, right? Think about everything being exposed to the far right of your histogram. You lose out on all of the information to the left. So I get it. Some ladies probably would like to have their dark circles removed, so that way their photo, they'll appreciate their photo a little bit more. But use that, again, it's a cosmetic thing. It's up to you on how you want to use it. And then, of course, you got the improve eyebrows. This dude's eyebrows are pretty choppy there. Super, super awesome. But what this is going to do is find the eyebrows and add in some contrast to darken them up. This can come in handy if someone does not have... Hello, Jaden. If someone does not have... what's the word that I'm thinking of? It can come in handy if someone doesn't have very robust or full eyebrows. But you can see it goes pretty aggressive, so use that sparingly to make it go a little bit longer. All right, so we'll minimize that, drop the eyes, and the last piece inside of the face AI, this is going to be the mouth. You can saturate lips, which we'll zoom in right here, and I don't recommend this for men unless you're doing something where the photo as a whole is desaturated, because it just doesn't work out so well, right? And then you can do the lip redness if the lips look a little pale or they're just not exposed properly. And then obviously if they're overexposed, you can darken them. And then you have teeth whitening. Now, don't pull the teeth whitening option up if there's no teeth in the photo. That doesn't make sense. So that's why we're not going to use it here. So that is Face AI in a nutshell. This is the photo that we started with, and this is what we ended with. Now, his shirt turned a little blue, and that's because of the accent AI that I used. So what I would probably end up doing with that one, with Luminar NEO, if you click on edits, you see that number 2 in the upper right hand corner there. That tells me that I have 2 edits over here. I can click on the Enhance AI, go to masking, grab my brush, hit erase, and then I can just erase this from his shirt. So that way his shirt isn't getting this increased saturation or whatever. And this is one of the things that you may end up needing to do as you go along with your edits using Luminar. So just know that you can come back in and retouch. And now you see that it's not impacting his shirt. The accent AI is no longer on his shirt, which makes more sense. So let's go back to the agenda. All right, so now we have skin AI. Let's see, we'll edit this photo. So let's jump back into the computer. And here is a photo of a gentleman, and we're gonna edit his skin. You can see he's got some red spots here. So this is a prime example or prime photo for us to try out the skin AI. And we're gonna discard those edits. I don't know why they're still there. You can go away, delete, delete, and delete. There we go. I was working on this photo yesterday, so I just wanted to get rid of everything. And for this one, I'm not going to throw any Enhance AI. I think the way that this photo was already exposed is pretty good, so we're just going to come down to Skin AI. Now, there's only 2 sliders in here, and then you have a masking option. This does a pretty good job at finding, so let's just go ahead. Well, I guess I gotta increase that real quick, and then we'll show the mask. So it's going over the entire image right now. But if we come back over here to the adjustments, we'll see that it's really only impacting the skin. And the reason for that is Luminar is using technology to, and don't quote me on this, I believe what's happening is Luminar is using technology to find tones that are in normal skin range, and then, or skin tones that are, or normal tones that are in the skin tonal range, and it applies this correction to it, which is really a surface blur. And it's getting rid of some of those blemishes on this guy's face. Not all of them, so it actually looks pretty natural, right? So this is what he looks like without the skin AI, and then this is what his skin looks like with it on. And it's just giving him a less acne or blemished face. Now, I would not edit out all of those blemishes, right? This is a part of who this individual is, so I would leave all of those blemishes on his face, and I would probably only pull this up. I'd probably even do less, a little less. This is just my personal editing style. I would do enough to help clear up some of the coarseness in the pores, but not so much that he ends up looking plastic. All right, that's not the goal. Now, we'll check this box here that says skin defect removal and see what it does. And it looks like it's trying its best to get rid of some of those blemishes. If we turn it off and on, you can see that it's getting rid of, like, over here, and I think there's some down in this area. Yeah, one right there. So it does work pretty well, but he has quite a bit. So that is the purpose or my goal, is to show you can get rid of a lot of stuff, but don't overdo it. Let people be who they are. Now, more of those blemishes go away as I bring the amount up. And just for tutorial purpose, I'll pull it up to 100 and zoom in. You can see it really smooths out the skin. You can still see some of his pores coming through on the image. So, but again, I would leave this more on the lower range. And you know, you can check that block. I think this looks natural. Like, the goal is, if you see a person and if you see a person in a photo and then you see them in real life, you should probably think like, oh man, you look the exact same. If you look at a person in a photo and then you see them in real life and they don't look the same, then maybe you edited the photo a little too far. But that is Skin AI. And of course, you can mask this in using any of these masking options. So I can use the Mask AI here, and it's going to analyze the photo. And if you need something to soothe you, you can just move your mouse over the image, and Luminar just makes these little designs around your mouse as you move it. So, you know, gives you something to do while you wait for your computer to think. And in all of my testing, it has not slowed down the processing. Could, but I haven't seen anything slow down whenever I do this. Now, for some reason, not for some reason, it's probably because I'm also live streaming. Normally it doesn't take this long. Normally it takes maybe about, I don't know, 10 seconds at the most. But I think that one took a little bit longer. The good news is it does move a little slow, but this is a stable program, so it's not going to crash on you. Now, whenever you run the mask, you see you get these options. I got human, sky, flora, water, which I don't know what it thinks is water. Oh, okay. So there's a filter on the top of the image, and it's capturing that as water. And then mountains. Don't know what it sees as mountains, but again, got that. And then we got some man-made ground. I really feel like, and it's picking up his shirt as the man-made ground. So what does it think is human? Probably just like his face. And it's taking a minute to tell me what it thinks is human on this particular photo. Oh, so there you go. It's pretty much all him, right? Pretty cool. Just something to keep in mind. You do have this on every single one of these filters. Now, once you run the Mask AI one time on the image, it stores all of that information inside of the image. So no matter what filter you go to, I can go to toning. We'll just make something really weird. We'll go blue. Nah. All right, there we go. We'll go there. Then into the shadows, we'll saturate something. Okay, and then I can click on masking, and if I click Mask AI, it's already analyzed the photo, so that one went a lot faster. And then I can say, you know what, I only want this to be on the human. Come back over here, go to more actions, and then invert. And now I've applied that masking to the background. And I got some weird stuff going on with his hair, so I would have to go in and use the brush to erase some of that. But you get the point that you can use the masking options or the Mask AI to really get the features, right? Because the whole purpose of getting Luminar Luminar NEO is to use some of those AI features. I think that there's some room for improvement, but it is really cool with what they have offered so far. So now we've gone through skin AI and face AI. So now we're on to manual edits. Let's see here. Which photo do we want to manually edit? We'll go with this one. Now, this image, it probably looks familiar to a few of you because this is one of the photos that I used in a previous edit. Maybe a different pose, but still, same photo. Now, when I say manual edit, I mean not using the AI features. So that means that limits us to the develop option, all right? And I will use the AI masking features. I just won't use the AI tools like accent and stuff like that. So we'll go ahead and hit masking, and then I'm just gonna click mask AI and let it do its thing. And we'll see what comes up with, or what on, wow, I was gonna say on one again. What Luminar comes up with. We'll see. And it is just thinking and thinking and thinking. Now, I will mention, if you do plan to pick up a copy of Luminar NEO and you want to support the channel, use the affiliate link in the description below. It's at no extra cost to you, but it does help me continue to grow the channel and invest back into it. So if that's something you want to do, please consider checking out that link in the description box below. And the same thing for on one photo raw. You can also reach out to me at any point. Emails over on my website at freewillphotos.com. I do get back to everyone who sends me a message, so don't feel like your messages go into the abyss and you never get a return. All right. And you can also comment down below. And what I would like to know is, what are the things that you're excited to try inside of Luminar NEO down below. It could be on a portrait or it could be on anything else. Doesn't really matter. What are you excited about with Luminar NEO now that we have all of the features? So we have this particular image and it is done with its masking AI. Now, I guarantee you all of the blue, oh, it's only down here. For some reason, it picked this up as water. So let's find the human, because hopefully it does a pretty good mask on her. Yeah, it did all right. So this is where you, as the human, have to come in and clean up the mask, right? So we'll go there, grab the brush, and I want to see the mask. There we go. So now we'll grab the brush and we'll paint all of the areas that Luminar NEO missed with the AI tool. All right. And I'm going to do this kind of quick and not crudely, but just a little quick, right? Because what I want to do is isolate our subject. There's like a little bit down at the very bottom there that it missed. Overall, it did pretty good. Now, in between her arms, it didn't get that very well. So I'm going to hit erase. I'm going to make my brush smaller. And I'm just going to paint this. Now, what I would like to see Luminar NEO get, or just, yeah, what I would like to see Luminar NEO get is a perfect brush of some sort. It would make things like this a little bit easier. Now, I would normally zoom in a lot further and go over this pretty carefully with my Wacom tablet, but for live stream purposes, I'm not going to do that. Yeah, there wasn't a gap in her arm there, but all in all, it did pretty good. Now, it didn't do such a good job over here, so I'm just going to erase right around the edge, and then Make my brush a little bit larger. Paint all of this away where it tried to mask everything else that wasn't the human. And then I'll paint this edge as well. All right, so now hit Command 0. That brings me back to here. I actually got a really good selection on this subject, on this lady. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn off that, and we'll hit invert because I want to start with editing the background. And the reason why I'm doing this is I want to show you the contrast between using Relight AI and all these other features that are available to us, and why those are really good, but how you can do it if you want it to be a little bit more manual and have like more exposure controls, right? So first thing I can do is darken the background, just like so, right? And look at how well she is just popping off the background. That is pretty cool. Now, for this one, I would probably open the shadows just so that way it blends a little bit better. And I'll turn it off, turn it back on. And now she's like, you know, this would be one of those things where if you had text, like some of it could go behind, like on top of the wall, but behind her head. That would be kind of cool to play out in here. But I don't have any text that I can demonstrate that with. But then we'll go ahead and close the light tab. Maybe we want to throw a little bit of contrast onto this wall. So pull down, make a slight little S curve, and the back of the wall is blue, but what if we wanted to warm that up? So instead of increasing blue by pushing up, maybe we'll pull down on the blue channel, and look at that. We're adding in some of that yellow or cyan into the mix, and that looks kind of cool, right? And maybe that's not the point where we want to add it. Maybe we just want to add some cyan into the highlights. So I'll just click here, and I'll bring this adjustment back over there, and we'll pull down on the cyan. Now, you want to be careful with the way that you make your curves, but there you go. Now we got some cyan in the background, and that looks kind of cool. All right, so maybe we want to enhance the way that the color works. Now, this one is just some basic controls. This isn't your HSL, but you can improve or, I'm sorry, add or decrease the vibrance. So maybe we want like some color pop, right? So I'm just gonna go with vibrance all the way down, saturation all the way down, and now she's on a grayscaled background. All right, I'm just making this up as I go. And then I wouldn't worry about optics with this particular image or transform with this particular image because there's no need to change the aspect or skew or anything like that. And then I'll go ahead and click there to close that develop setting. And then I'll click on it again, and now I have a new set of develop settings. Now, if I were to expose this, guess what? It's going to expose the entire image. My mask is no longer applied. So I got to come back over here, and so what you can do, come back to my edits, go to masking, mask actions. Oh, because I was on the wrong one. Click masking, mask actions. We'll copy this, and then we'll come back to the other develop. Now, if you could rename these, this would be great. Because then I would know, like, this is my background down here, and this one up here is going to be my my subject. All right, but unfortunately, don't think you can. So I'm just gonna go ahead and add some exposure, And then I'll come down to the mask actions and paste that in. And then we're going to invert it so that way I am only editing her. Okay. So now what I can do is focus my attention on how do I want to craft the light on my subject. Do I want her to pop out a certain way? So maybe I can decrease the highlights a little bit, decrease the shadows, and contrast, and maybe even expose just a little bit. And then maybe improve the sharpness just a tad, and we'll just pull the masking up on that. And then we can come to color, and maybe I want her to be more vibrant. And my device is telling me that it is my bedtime, but I am not going to bed yet. So then we'll pull up on the saturation just a little bit. And I'm just experimenting here. Maybe we'll make her a little bit more warm or cooler, right? Because she's in all blue and could work. I think you are getting the point. So that is the way that you can manually edit an image. So if I hit the backslash key, you can see she's a little bit darker, and she's, on this background where she is a little bit brighter than the background, but I really enhanced that. Now, obviously, I took the saturation out, but if I were to come back in here and pull up these back to normal, now I really just separated her from that background that much more. All right. And that goes a long way for making a portrait really look nice and stand out. So those are the photo editing techniques that I would recommend for using Luminar NEO. Obviously, I went through this fairly quick, and I may not have explained or answered as many of the questions that you have. So if you got them, just drop them in the comment section below. Send me an email. Hit me up on my website. You can go over to the contact form at freewillphotos.com. The website link is also in the description box below. Now, if you found value in the video or the content, then hit the like button. Consider subscribing so that way you can get more, but don't forget to check that bell icon so you get notified whenever I do stuff like this. Now, if you are watching this before June 20th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, every day starting from today, which is June 17th, and even on the night of June 20th, I'm going to do a live stream. The schedule for each one of those events that I'm going to be hosting live is on my communities tab. So please go over there if that's something you are interested in, or you think you would be interested in, and you just want to join the live stream, ask questions. Otherwise, you can just put it into the comment section below and I will respond to you. So hopefully there was some value in today's content. And if there was, I am grateful that I was able to provide that. If you want to pick up a copy of Luminar, you can do so by using the link in the description box below, which is an affiliate link. Now, I got nothing more for you. So hopefully, you guys are staying inspired and you continue to create. So until next time, I want you to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.